Why is it that whenever I try to make some terrain, I just, go on YouTube, watch some really smart guys, some really good YouTubers, do some terrain tutorials, and I think, yeah, I can do that. And then I go and do something, and then it ends up looking like a bag of crap. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you some of the really simple ways to make rivers and to make them look decent. I'm not going to promise anything more than decent, but also I want to analyse which is the cheapest and most effective and easy, cutting corners way to make decent river effects for your terrain builds. Let's have a look. So the first thing I'm going to start with is a load of this. This cardboard, it's, my box from an old cabinet, basically. And the reason I'm going to start with this is because every time I get a terrain tutorial up on YouTube and I watch something and I think, I want to have a go at that, they start with, so just get a big piece of MDF. It's like, I don't have any MDF. Or they say plastic card or foam card or something else. And I think, I don't have any of these things. So let's do it with cardboard, plain old cardboard. I'm going to try and build a river with cardboard. People say it'll warp, people say it'll look messy, it'll look rubbish. Maybe it will, but I know you've got cardboard, I've got cardboard, it's something everyone can find. Hopefully, we can actually make something that, you don't have to go to B&Q or something and get some huge bits of MDF cut out for you. Let's crack on with the build and I'll walk you through the early stages of making a simple, very basic river. So we start with cardboard, glued on top of cardboard. Now you can see I've made a river shape out of this cardboard. It's pretty basic though. I mean, it is just 6 inches or so wide. It's got an inch each side for river bank. And then I glued it together with loads of PVA glue. That's it. That's how easy the start of this is. You can do this. Then, using white wood filler. Now I know I've already gone onto something that perhaps you don't have. But you can get this really easily. It's really cheap. I've used this wood filler just basically to fill in the gaps. You just get tons of it with PVA glue, stick it on the edges of your river, sort of smooth the edges so it looks like a riverbank, as you can see here. And that's kind of it. And just what's great about it is it just dries really hard and it looks like rock. And then I've just added some rocks with PVA glue. I don't know whether this is going to work, to make them look like Fords. That's all I did. Fast forward to the next day and voila! It's sort of a river. Basically, I glued some sand. This is just standard sand. I literally got a bag of it from a builder's yard years ago and tipped a bit on. Then I've glued that down and spray painted it with blues and greens. So I've used the Fang spray paint and Death World Forest from Games Workshop, but literally any blue or green will do. I don't really care that much. I just kind of want it to look a bit like a river. And as you can see, it kind of does look a bit like a river. I've got green river banks, I've got blue river section, and the edges look okay. The filler has done its job, it's filled in the gaps a little, and I'll cover it up with flock and stuff later anyway. The one thing worth noting is that the sort of patchy filler in the river banks, but it's solid. The spray paint has held everything in place, and yes, it's got a bit of wobble in it, but it's fine. It's not too much of an issue. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to put some detailing in the actual river itself. Now this isn't going to be straightforward, but I'm going to start basically by painting the sand. Now using dark grey and light grey, and a crappy paintbrush, I'm going to pick out the bigger pebbles. This is the great thing about builder sand, is that it's got loads of little rubbish bits in it. So I'm just going to paint the little pebbles in, and there's not many of them, so it's not going to take me all that long. Now, using something very straightforward, tufts. Now these are slightly crushed tufts. I can't remember which one they are. They're like dry grass tufts from Army Painter. I'm going to just glue them into the riverbed. I've crushed them a little bit because I put too many in the same pack essentially. And here I'm struggling with the super glue. But what I'm going to do is, using these tufts, I'm just going to use the kind of flow of the river. And as you can see, I'm choosing it to go to the left of the screen now, and they're kind of bending that way, so it looks quite good. I know most people who have sort of collect toy soldiers have some tufts. Not many people have flock these days. It's just easier. It's a bit more pricey. If you know how to make tufts, make them. Next, using what I would probably describe as one of the worst flocks ever, I'm just going to do like little patches in the river. I'm going to use this because it's rubbish. I got it for free in an army set once. It's got like pink in it. It's quite ugly. But using super glue for this, and the reason I'm using super glue is because the water effect that I'm going to try is kind of PVA glue based, and this is one I'll talk about a bit more later on, but basically it's one that you can get from Woodland Scenics, and I thought this one seems good, I just need to pour it in. It's a bit expensive, but I'll just pour it in. So that's why I'm using super glue and trying out the dregs of my super glue bottle and pouring this disgusting pink, green, yellow flock on it. But the great thing about it is patches, it's going to be covered up, and it's all going to sort of hopefully be covered by the river once we get over the painful process of dragging the last dregs of super glue out of this pot. Now, using a dark green foam scatter, let's clarify that. It's the dark green foam scatter. This is just basically normal foam flock. You can get these from Javis or Geek Gaming or wherever you fancy getting it from. This is actually Geek Gaming stuff because I've been watching his videos and he makes it look so easy. Anyway, so I'm gluing a couple of patches of this stuff using the final dregs of that super glue once I get there eventually through this painful process. And I'm going to use, again, just a few of these dabs of this stuff and across the riverbeds, and then hopefully we'll have a nice variety of different colours and kind of areas along the riverbed that we can make look, you know, just a little bit more characterful than just the stones and the pebbles that we've glued so far. So here is a bit where I use a piece of kit that, I'll be honest, I never thought I'd need, never thought I'd want, but I was persuaded to buy it because people on the internet kept telling me to get it. This is a static grass applicator. I've put some patches of glue on either side of the river, and I do have some very long sort of flock that I've had for ages. I bought it and it's too long, it's like 10 millimeters long. And I thought, I'm going to do some patches on either side using this static grass applicator, which is meant to make the grass stand up straight. Doesn't appear to be doing anything. So I'm trying desperately to do this, and it kind of works. It sort of makes some of them stand on their end, but if I'm honest, maybe I needed shorter flock, but the whole point of putting it on was because I need to get rid of this stuff. I've had it for ages and it's crap. So maybe it'd be fine if you have the right length of flock, but if I'm honest, I would steer clear of static grass applicators if you're not 100% sure what you're doing, because the first one I got nearly melted, the second one I got keeps sparking, and I don't want to spend 100 quid on something because ultimately, you know, it seems like a massive waste of money to me. So that's what it looks like once you've tipped it all over. You've got all your static grass everywhere, and then you kind of just dab it off, shake it away, maybe let it dry a bit, and then voila, you've got some tufts that are kind of standing up on end. They actually look better than I thought they would. Now, you can see my plastic pot hovering around at the top of the screen there. It's got PVA glue in it. It's watered down about half and half-ish. I really don't think there's an exact science to this stuff, but I think it seems to work better when it's a little waterier for this sort of thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to paint it over the riverbanks, and then we're going to put flock on the riverbanks. So I attempted to use some vague kind of logic when applying flock. So I started by just putting PVA glue closer to the river itself. So I'm painting all along the insides of the riverbank. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to get some dark green flock for this kind of area. And my logic is the closer you are to the water, the damper you are, and the more likely you are to be sort of, you know, get some water. So the greener the flowering of the grass. So that's what I do. I've got a little tub of dark green flock. It all comes out in one big lump because if I'm honest, this is Geek Gamer's Scenic stuff. I don't know whether this is all foam flock. It just always seems to come out in a big lump. Maybe I need to dry it in some way or something, but the rest of it works really well, and once you've sort of picked apart the lumps, it does do pretty much what it said, but you just got to pick it up and whack it back in and shake it again, and it comes out in another lump. So this is what the pain of doing this flock. But it's all right. It looks quite good when we're done. So this is the first stage of the flocking process. Now, all we're going to do is do exactly the same thing, but we're going to move in on the rest of the riverbanks, and we're going to make sure that we have the flock in the right places and the right colours. But here you can go super zoom there, see the lovely dark riverbank and even that blodge of PVA. So in following that logic, the next stage is to, move up the riverbank and put lighter greens in place. So let's zoom through that. We'll put all the PVA glue on and get a slightly lighter shade of green and dunk all that on. It comes down in a big blodge again, and then I pour it out all along the riverbank, and then we do the same with another layer of lighter green. Now, what happens when I do this, and I don't know whether this is something that other people do or terrain experts or whatever do, I did it came out in big blodges again with the light one, and then I kind of looked at it, and at the end I kind of said, you know what, I think that looks a bit naff. So what I did was I just put more PVA glue on top and then kind of just added different colours of shades. I think I just did too much of one of the three shades that I did in one section, and so I just added a bit of a mix to make it look a bit nicer. And there you have it. There is my river. This is, it looks fine. It's not that special, but you can see the mixture of different greens. It hasn't fully dried when I filmed this, but you can see the sort of different layers of flock there building up. And the great thing about foam flock is it sort of sucks up all the PVA glue, so you can it dries relatively hard, and then you can paint more PVA glue over the end, basically just to kind of solidify it again and seal it all in there. Now, using some duct tape, I'm going to try something crazy. I'm going to do a resin pour with this sort of Woodland Scenics resin. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the duct tape on the edges of this terrain piece, and then we're going to pour some stuff on. So here we are at the top of the front end. I'm going to peel some duct tape off. You've probably never seen anyone do this in real life before. This is the duct tape going on the end. I don't know whether this is going to be enough to hold the resin in. We'll see. It's Woodland Scenics resin. It's realistic water. It costs like 40 something quid. It's really, really expensive. And I used some of it for something else before. And I'm just dribbling the dregs straight onto everything. And as I mentioned already before, this is something you cannot use in conjunction with PVA glue. So I've superglued everything that I'm pouring the resin onto. Basically what happens is if you glue those tufts that you can see in the centre of the video down on with PVA glue, then this kind of reacts with it, and it basically makes that PVA glue kind of go cloudy and maybe unbond everything, so it's not ideal. But this is a really easy product to use, so I think it's probably worth a go. Maybe if it wasn't so expensive, I could really recommend it. I'll be honest, I clearly don't have enough resin here to actually, get this proper depth right. So I'm just kind of fiddling around with it, pouring it backwards and forwards, making sure it sort of levels off. And I'm sure it'd take time, but there's not enough of it to really flow into the corners. So I'm just pouring it around and hoping that it evens out, covers every single stone and tuft. Then hopefully it'll dry into something resembling, what I want, i.e. a riverbed. So, how does it look? I know, that's what you want to know. Well, you know what? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Right, so first of all, let's look at the edges. It's sealed, all right? None of it's come on the bottom. You can see it's definitely that cardboard I mentioned. It's pretty square. I mean, it's not perfect. It lays flat. The edges are pretty good. They're not... You can, it absorbed all the PVA, and actually even that thin layer of resin works really well. So I think, plus sides, this resin pour is pretty good. As I said, it's expensive. It really is. I think it's probably too expensive, especially if you're just wanting to do something easier. And I know there are cheaper ways to do it, and I think there are ways that potentially could be cheaper and more effective than this. So that's what I'm going to do. But in a second. But first, look, this is pretty good. Okay, so got the tufts, got the clumps of flock. Even the ugly flock, I think, looks okay in the centre there. So not bad, not bad. I could probably put more glue over it to make it sort of really solid if I was entering it in tournaments or using it in tournaments. But not bad. Right, now let's have a look at something I teased at earlier on in the video. This is when I used silicone, clear silicone, to try and make a riverbed. Now, I just thought, basically I was sealing the sink. And I thought, I've got this whole tube of silicone that's see-through now. What am I going to do with this? And I thought, I think I can make something out of this. let's have a look what happened. So this is the stuff I tried to use. It's a Crystal Unibond Silicone. First issue was, it was basically dry, the nozzle was broken, and it tries coming out as like a sausage, but it's just almost solid. There's not enough room for it to squeeze itself out. So use fresh stuff. I actually don't know what fresh stuff would look like. It'd probably be really good. So what I did, I tried poking it down. And I know you can use wet fingers to prod silicone in, so I did that, but with a paintbrush that had paint on it, which was stupid. So it sort of started messing up and mixing with the paint off the rocks, which hadn't fully dried yet, and started, as you can see, making this horrible white mess. Then I tried using a trowel, dabbing it down with a tissue first, then using my sort of trowel thing that I used to spread the filler with earlier on in the video, and that also lost some of the pigment from the filler, which came off because of the silicone. Basically, this was not a good idea. Not a good idea at all. So this is what I showed you at the start of the video. You can sort of see it. Basically, it has mixed with the paint, definitely, and made a bit of a mess. But also, if you look closely underneath the thing, it started peeling up the sort of flock, the tufts. I actually ended up pulling off some of the tufts so that I didn't waste them in the end, because it was just making a complete mess. But I think once this had dried, I sort of looked at it and thought, okay, this looks ugly and it's a complete mess. But it has potential, because it's really sort of jelly, it's kind of solid, it's held some position, and, you know, the rocks have some definition. And what I liked the idea about it is it can sort of flatten off the rocks and make it look, you know, easy for models potentially to stand on. So, you know what? I'm going to give it another go. I'm going to flock this up and use it anyway. It doesn't look horrible. I mean, it looks fine. It's fine for a river anyway, so you'll see it in videos and maybe at tournaments or whatever. But I'm going to give it another go. But this time, there's two things I'm not going to do. One, I'm not going to rush it, because last time I put paint on these things and didn't let them dry. And I glued the stuff down, and I don't think I should use anything underneath. If it's going to be choppy water, I think I'm fine just sort of not having anything underneath, because ultimately, if it was choppy water, you can't see the plants underneath there, and B, there might not be any, because if there's foam constantly on top, there's not going to be any light for photosynthesis and stuff, or not very much anyway, so, or it'll just get swept down the stream. So, logically, it makes more sense to not have it anyway, so let's make it easier on ourselves and save some stuff, and give it another go. So all I'm doing here is basically, I could open the silicone thing in the end because the tube was just too gunked up, but you can still apply it with the nozzle, and then I just scooped and I spread in one direction, and actually it was a lot easier now there are no tufts stuck underneath. So that's how to apply the silicone. Another day, another disaster. But, I mean, not exactly. So you already saw the first stage of work on this silicone-style water feature for the river. So this is the piece after I've flocked it up. So it actually, I kind of think it looks fine. It's not amazing, and the closer you get to it, the worse it gets. But it's not bad. Couple of notes though. So you can see, you might be able to see in the sort of picture here, that there's quite a lot of bits of flock which is kind of stuck into the silicone. So top tip, if you're going to use silicone, I think it might be something to do with the static applicator. Silicone I know is used in electric, so it might have some sort of static properties. Anyway, it's stuck in there, and that was completely dry, the silicone, by 24 hours or more. So, when I started flocking, a lot of it got stuck in. So don't do that. I would advise maybe do the flocking completely after everything is the flocking before you've actually done this this thing. So that's worth noting. But generally everything else looks kind of fine. The grass has actually worked a lot better. You can see the real level there. I mean, again, I'm far away. But this is the second river, which this doesn't have any of the kind of flock underneath the layers. So, and actually, I think it might look not as good. I mean, there's still a lot of flock, and this is after a hoover as well, really good hoover as well. So, I don't know. It's clear there's clearly something wrong with static grass and silicone. Maybe someone clever on the internet has already explained this and told people not to do it. But I'm telling you now, silicone works. I don't really like the static grass effect anyway, so I'm not that desperate. I kind of think it would look better if it was just the green flock. Yes, it looks a little kind of Shire-ish, you know, like the Shire. It looks a bit more kind of cartoony, friendly rivers, whereas I know some of the people on the internet do amazing things with their rivers, i.e. this guy. But I generally think this is a pretty good way of making water effects, and crucially, two reasons. Crucially, very, very cheap. Silicone, the cheapest silicone, you know, you can get these really accessibly from most corner sort of stores that sell these kind of things. And you know, they're like a £5 or maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less. Really good. And also, it's great because it doesn't have any sort of complicated chemical processes. There's no need to seal the ends. You have to get your fingers a bit mucky, but I don't think there's anything wrong with putting it on your fingers, or at least my fingers haven't melted off. But I mean, you can always wear a bit of gloves if you're a bit wary. But generally, I would really recommend this. But it's still not that beautiful kind of set river. This would be rubbish if you wanted to make a lake, for example, or a pond. Now, I mentioned earlier in the post that I'd used water effects before to make something, and I mentioned this because, and I thought in passing I should explain what I did. What I did before was use some of the water effects to make some dead marshes, like little pools, and they were very thin. So I've had a go at doing kind of pools of resin that are surrounded and enclosed. But I thought I'm going to try some resin, but not in a kind of sealed environment. So I've got a big crate of resin. This is 2 big bottles. I'll pull it open and then we'll have a bit of a look in a second as to what actually looks like. And then I'm going to walk you through how I'm going to do some resin. 40 quid's worth of resin here, but my carpet is a lot more expensive than that. Let's see what happens. So here's the box I got off Amazon. There's 3.25 kilograms of resin in there. I've got the link to this exact product in the description below. It's Dyne Epoxide Hard, a German firm. It was the cheapest one, got it off Prime. And just so you know, I don't make any money off the link below. It's just so that you know exactly what I bought. If you want to support the video, please do by either becoming a patron supporter, the link is also below, or just comment or like the video, and comment underneath if you don't like something or you think that something's bad. That'll really help me, helps YouTube deliver the video to more people, and I can improve the next one. Here are the rivers that I'm going to use. So these are made in the same way as the rivers that I showed you already in this video. And look, they don't quite fit together because of the sort of putty drying on the edges, making it lumpy. So all I'm going to do is just trim the edges, make sure they're as flat as they possibly can. And this will just allow the tape to stick to them a bit better, to form a sort of more, hopefully a more coherent seal. So I just use a sharp knife there for that. And it's worth noting, I probably should use some glue of some kind to do this as well, not just the duct tape that you're seeing there. But, you know, I'm not a particularly smart person, so and it worked all right for the Woodland Scenics resin pour earlier on, so I think let's crack on. So there you go, sealing the bottom, not particularly well, it must be added. A little bit of a rush job here, so make sure you seal it as well as you can. I've seen people on the internet use sort of bits of cardboard glued together with wood glue that sort of seals the thing, or a hot glue gun. I would definitely recommend that. And there's advantages to the duct tape over bits of cardboard in that it sort of molds to the shape, so if it's slightly uneven shape, it's a bit better. So I'd say hot glue and this would probably be your best bet. That's what I'm going to do in the future. But either way, there you go, that's the sealing. Let's have a look at the weighing scales now. So I've got just disposable plastic cups. Don't use anything that you're going to need. This particular resin, bit awkward because it doesn't have like a pouring funnel or anything like that, but I managed to nail it anyway. I wanted about half the amount that it recommends. I thought that would be about right, and it worked out okay. And then you do the same with this, which is proven a little bit more difficult because it's not the same. I'd recommend some kind of one with a spout, or even having a funnel of some sort. If you've got a tiny little plastic funnel, that would be great. But here you go, I'm just trying to get exactly 23.5, but I can't get that because my scales don't show that much. So I go with 24 because I dribbled a bit off anyway. So there you go, that's me mixing. And notice that straight away you've got to start mixing. So it's already reacting. So I mix this, and it says on the packet 3 minutes of mixing, 3 to 4 minutes. So that's exactly what I've done. I've sped this up 12 times faster than real life. So this is exactly 3 minutes mixed up. Then I put it to one side, he's got air bubbles in there, and then move everything in the way, and then start the pour. This is the exciting and the scary bit. So pouring it straight on into the middle there and hoping that it settles out. And actually looking at it, I probably overflocked this river, but that's something I'm going to have to cope with in the end process. Unfortunately, I'll speed this up because it does take a long time. I sort of move them around, jiggle them around so that the water gets into all corners of the river, and then use a lollipop stick, the one I used to stir it with, just to sort of prod around, get the last dregs out, and to just make sure it's okay. Check the seals, it hasn't pushed. And what I use is I prop some random objects in place of the ends, just to try and hold it in place. So I've got my measuring tape there, and later I use some boxes of ruffians, because I've got a few ruffians kicking about at the moment. So that's what we've got. I do check it, but sadly I came back after a couple of hours, and I do have some leakage. I think it's from this one on the left that you can see there. It's not sealed very well, and it's not loads of resin coming out, and there's plenty staying in there, but it did prove a bit of an issue, so I popped it up with more ruffian boxes. So this is the next day. As you can see, that is the tray that I used on. I've got some resin stuck on the tray. It's pretty tough, so that shows that it's dried, but obviously means that something's leaked as well. So here we go. I prop them up later on. Here are the rivers. So as you can see, it's shiny, that's a start, and the tufts look okay, and it's pretty solid as well, which is really nice to see. So let's take the tape off and see whether it holds in place and is easy to do. As you can see, it is peeling off some of the flock, which is not necessarily a problem. I can just glue a bit on at the bottom, and actually the resin has definitely helped stick the duct tape in place, which is neither a good thing nor a bad thing really, but the edge is okay. It's got a little slight lip on it, but other than that, it's pretty fancy. So there you go, that's the resin pour, and this is the end result. You've already seen me peeling off the plastic, and you know what? It does look good. I mean, you can see why people like this chump use a lot of resin. Sorry, Lockie. But I must say, I think if you're a real beginner, maybe steer clear. There are numerous reasons, especially if you're younger and you don't have, it's not your own house that you're pouring resin in, things like that. But I would definitely recommend giving it a go. It is as easy as they make it look. Honestly, like people like your terrain tutors and your Luke's APS Geek Gaming Scenics and all those sort of things, they make it look easy, and actually it's not as hard as it looks. The stirring process was straightforward, and yes, I did get a fair amount of seepage. I think if I'd used a hot glue gun or even just some kind of PVA to stick down the duct tape and let it dry before I poured the resin, it would have been much better, much more efficient. But then I didn't need that with the water effects, the realistic water effects from Woodland Scenics. Now that one worked really well, but I'm not sure whether that was because there was not very much of it left. Maybe I should have taken a bit more time with the resin pour as well, or even put less in, and that might have worked well. But I did lose a fair amount in my tray. So actually, what would I recommend? If I was to choose one of the 3 types that I've tried out to just anyone to give it a bash, honestly, the Silicone's really good. It's really straightforward. It's really cheap. I mean, I mentioned earlier about £5, £5 to £8. So you're looking at, and it gets a lot of river done. So if you're making a cheap cardboard river, you can't really go wrong with that Silicone stuff. It just gave a great effect, but be very careful. Don't put very much on the base. Make sure everything's really solid and you've got a decent river, and it is going to be a fast-flowing, looking quite dynamic river. If you want ponds or lakes or slow sort of damp rivers like the one I've kind of done, then resin or the Woodland Scenics are the best. I'm inclined to say if money was no object, and if you had infinite amounts of money and you don't care, you just want something quick and easy, the Woodland Scenics one is really very good, but it is incredibly expensive. You get a fair amount out of that thing, but it's nothing on the scale of the resin that I've bought, and I've got loads of that left. It's going to be, effective for a very long time. So, I guess I don't really recommend one. the resin feels like it's the best choice, but it's just so much more difficult. There's all the odour, the potential burning of your hands and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, I had a mask on. I didn't smell it. It's in a spare room rather than a garage, and the window was open, but there were no fumes, not that I could tell. So there you go. That's my kind of basic river. It looks pretty good. It's not amazing, but then, nobody's going to make amazing rivers the first time they try it. This was my first time trying to make a river, and I think it looks pretty good. So if you really enjoyed this kind of video, the kind of, taking the piss out of how bad I am at terrain kind of video, and, hopefully showing that it is possible, please let me know in the comments below. If you think there's something that I should have done better, comment that below as well. Leave me a like, share it if you want, but point it out whenever someone asks in a group, a terrain group, how to make rivers. Share this link. That would be amazing. Other than that, thank you very much for watching. Stick around if you really, really want to support the channel. Consider being a patron. Just follow the link below, patreon.com/battlegames in Middle-earth, and consider it a tip jar for anyone who really enjoys the videos I make. So, and also you get entered into competitions. So thank you very much for watching this video, and good luck on your rivers. Hopefully your resin doesn't leak everywhere like it did for me. Thanks for watching.